My name is Damon Jones. I'm the New York representative of Blacks in Law Enforcement of America. And we gathered here this morning because we are outraged at the inflammatory remarks of NYPD PBA President Pat Lynch. We know too well as officers of color, as black law enforcement professionals, of the incidents within New York City, the state of New York, and around the country. We say that we are 4 degrees separation from the victims. Either we know the victim, we know somebody that knows the victim is a family member, and sometimes we are the victim when we're shot or killed by our white counterparts when we're off duty or in plain clothes doing our job that we sworn to do. So we are saying that it has to be some sensitivity when there's a loss of life. We do understand that the PBA plays a role in labor rights, but when it comes to civil and human rights violations, he is really out of line. Now, he stated that the officer did not use a chokehold. Then what procedure of restraint did this officer use? And when was he trained to use this procedure or restraint? Show the training. Does NYPD train in that type of procedure? Because they say you should not use chokeholds. Now, we're gathered here today with a family member of Eric Garner, and we also here with the father of Ramarley Graham, the young man that was shot and killed in the Bronx. And we also have here Noah Leader from 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. We have Corey Pegues from Law Enforcement Alliance, and I would like to bring on Noah Leader from 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care.
Good morning. My name is Noah Leader from 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, and we've come to the doorstep, to the house of Patty Lynch and the PBA to personally deliver a message that we're not political pundits, we're not politicians, we're not race baiters, we're not elected officials. We're law enforcement officers of New York City, and we're outraged at some of his comments, which are inflammatory, incorrect, and it can only cause to divide communities of color in the New York City Police Department. It's ludicrous for Patty Lynch, a longtime police officer, to declare that that officer did not use an unauthorized tactic, which is a chokehold. A chokehold, as defined by the New York City Police Department Patrol Guide, states any pressure to the throat or windpipe which can prevent or obstruct intake of air. If it's not a chokehold, then what is it? When Patty Lynch declared that most of the interactions between police officers and individuals in communities of color are initiated by crime or criminality, and then says that officers in the same press conference are forced to live up to quotas, which forces negative interaction, unnecessary interaction, he's incorrect. We're here to say to Patty Lynch that your comments only cause further friction and misinformation to communities of color in the New York City Police Department when we're here, and we all should be here to bridge the gap. Once again, we're at his house, at his doorstep, not as race baiters, not as pundits, not as politicians, but we're here as law enforcement officers to say, Patty, you're wrong, we disagree with you, we call for prosecution, conviction, and imprisonment of the officers that caused the death of Eric Garner.
And next up to speak is Corey Pegues, co-founder of Law Enforcement Alliance.
Good morning. Again, I'm Corey Pegues from the Law Enforcement Alliance. I stand here as a father of young black children. I stand here as a recently retired executive in the New York City Police Department. Last assignment was commanding officer of the 67th Precinct. So I'm qualified and quantified to speak on issues dealing with the New York City Police Department.
That's right.
And one of the issues I definitely know, January 1992, when I went into police academy, I had extensive training. But not one time did I have training that told me to come behind somebody, jump on their neck, put all my weight on them, drag them to the ground, continually hold the chokehold, take my grasp off his neck, put my knee on his head, and then take my hand and smash his face to the ground. All the while, we counted 7 times he said, "I can't breathe." And on the 8th time, that was his last breath.
That's right.
So if Pat Lynch, who's the head of the PBA, which is in charge of 20-something thousand cops, if that's the training that we're getting in the New York City Police Department now, then the whole department needs to be restructured. The training needs to be restructured. The commissioner needs to be gone, and definitely the head of training, if that's the training that we're doing. So don't bamboozle the people, because what you're doing is giving us a very big divide in the communities. The minority communities are looking at this. Let me take a step back. Not only minority communities, all ethnicities are looking at this picture. Take a good look. Snap, get a close-up. If this is not a chokehold, tell me what a chokehold is. I want to see the expert analysis. I want to see the expert analyst that comes out to court and dispute that arm on the neck. And a patrol guy specifically says you cannot use a chokehold. You cannot put any pressure and obstruct the airway. And we also got to say that everyone standing behind me, we're all sworn law enforcement officers. The job has been tremendous for all of us. But you know what? When something is wrong, we must speak out on it. We must speak out on the injustices. Every day there's thousands of arrests. Thousands. In my career, thousands of arrests. A lot of people resist arrest, but a lot of people not dying. So I'm not buying that. And for the PBA President, Sergeant Mullins, to say last week on an interview, sometimes in police work, people die. Well, you know what? I pray to God it's not your child. I pray to God it's not your son, your daughter, or your brother that died at the hands of police. And we know that that cop that did the chokehold went to work, and he didn't want to kill nobody. But guess what? Eric Garner is dead. And he's dead because there was a litany of errors at the location. There was no supervision. Actually, there was supervision on the scene that absolutely they didn't do anything. They didn't take a step back. They didn't reevaluate the situation. Once Mr. Garner said, not today, a light bulb should have went off and somebody had one of those 2 cops saying he doesn't want to go. So we need to reevaluate, take a step back, get the supervisor here so they can, they can lead us into arresting this person. Again, we won't be bamboozled by the statements, irresponsible and disrespectful statements to the minority communities by saying that arm around the neck for more than 30-something seconds was not a chokehold. Thank you.
We're going to bring up next is Dennis Jones from Law Enforcement Alliance.
Thank you all. Again, we want to refute a lot of the statements that were made by not only Pat Lynch from the PBA, but also Sergeant Mullins from the SBA. Pat Mullins indicated that the report from the ME was absolutely mistaken and that it was false. And we want to know, did Mr. Lynch go to medical school? I think that the DA, the judge, and all of the attorneys that come from the Bar Association are going to go with the report that the medical examiner has put out, as opposed to statements put out by Pat Lynch. We also know that having a person with difficulty breathing should be on his back and an airway should be provided, not turning him over on his side as PBA President Pat Lynch said that the officers did. And we have Sergeant Mullins saying something, as Corey said, sometimes people are going to die. It happens to surgeons in the hospital, but we don't sit and call for prosecution of these surgeons. I'm appalled at that statement. Is he comparing a police-involved death to a surgeon doing surgery, trying to save a life. This is what we're getting statements from our officials. This is the statements that we're getting from police department officials. We can't accept that. We have to refute that, and we have to call it as it is. So we're looking for the NYPD. We know that the NYPD is the greatest police department in the country. And we know that they get a great level of training. We know that their training is some of the best training. Then we come with these unprofessional statements. It's uncalled for. These things that are being spewed out of the mouths of the NYPD, PBA, and SBA presidents. What we expect from them is bringing decorum into the police department, bringing decorum and professionalism to the ones that are out there in the street. So we're going to call for them to come to these families that are standing here and apologize. We want them to apologize to the community, because all of the statements that they're stating are actually bringing a divide, as Noah Leader stated. We're dividing a community that we, standing here, are trying to bridge that gap. We're bridging that gap between law enforcement and community daily, and we have irresponsible statements being made by the PBA president and the SBA president. So we're deeply concerned, and we're asking the police commissioner and we're asking the mayor to come out and refute those same statements, to stand by the communities, not necessarily stand against the police department, but stand by the communities that they are out there to serve. So again, we're asking for the PBA president, Pat Lynch, and the PBA, the Sergeant, the Benevolent Association, Sergeant Mullins, to come back out and apologize to these communities for the statements that they're making. Thank you.
In closing, I would not be standing here if we weren't proud to have a badge and wear the blue uniform and represent our community and be role models for the young men and women in our community. On our own time, we go into the different communities and mentor children and talk to children so they could be law enforcement. But when young children see incidents like this and hear remarks from the PBA president, hear remarks from the commissioner, what does that do? What does that do? They do not want to be a part of this institution no more. The numbers of black officers throughout the United States are dwindling because of cases of police criminality without no accountability. So we want to say, we're not anti-law enforcement. This is not the war on cops. What we're saying, that the community and law enforcement needs to work together. There is a problem. 249 deaths after Amadou Diallo, there is a problem. And somebody needs to address it. We cannot continue to do the Hollywood shuffle politically when lives are being lost and there's no accountability. And the only recourse these families have is to go into civil court. And guess what? That's when the truth comes out. In federal deposition, that's when we find out who's lying. But still nobody goes to jail and there's no accountability. So we said we want accountability, we want fairness, and as law enforcement, we're not going to tolerate inflammatory remarks from leaders in law enforcement. Now, Frank, you want to say something? We have Frank Graham. He's the father of Ramarley Graham, the young man that was shot and killed in the Bronx.
Good morning. You know, on the day when Richard Ace, the judge dismissed the case in the Bronx, Pat Lynch said, there are no winners here. Well, Mr. Lynch, being in my shoes, Richard Ace went home to his family. And weekly, I go to the cemetery and visit my son. So tell me if I'm definitely not a loser. Because I can't hug and I can't hold my son no more. I know you have a job to do, but you need to think twice before you say some of the things you say, because all you're doing is dividing the city. People talk horrible things in the street. I think if it was just you alone, Mr. Lynch, we would have the same thing that is going on in Missouri in this city. You need to think before you speak. because the word comes out your mouth at times is very disrespectful to family and friends and people all over in this community. Thank you.
Standing to my left is Evelina Graham, first cousin of Eric Garner. She came here as a show of support for her family member, her precious cousins. She doesn't want to speak at this time. You can take some photos, but she doesn't want to speak at this time. But she's here to represent the family. I was on the phone with the mom yesterday and the sister about an hour ago. The family is very, very upset at what's going on. They want a clear, concise, thorough investigation. However, they have some gray area on knowing that there was a department regulation that was violated and there wasn't anything done to the officer. He was not suspended. That's a gray area for them. You know, as a matter of fact, speaking with his sister just an hour ago, she says that, you know, he's suspended with pay. So what happened to he's modified with no pay, so he's still getting a check every 2 weeks. Serious question that the commissioner, they must answer. Because I know as a cop for 20-some years, if a cop cursed at a sergeant, they were suspended for 30 days with no pay. Immediately, just cursing. Or you told a cop, go to Broad Street, and he went to Water Street. You disobeyed our direct order, suspended for 30 days. But you choke somebody, which is a clear, we didn't make these words up. It's New York City Police Department patrol guide. It's right there. It's it. They said absolutely no chokeholds. So why wasn't this cop suspended?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Lynch and Mullins made these comments 9 days ago. So why not call for an apology sooner? What's the timing now? Their comments have been out there now for a week and a half.
You want to say?
Well, I'll tell you. Well, he said why 9 days later? Well, if you've been watching the Law Enforcement Alliance, Black Police Association, 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement, we have been on this issue almost every single day. He was on Al Jazeera 2 nights ago. He was on Hot 97 Street Soldiers. I've been on news. We've been on this. We've been on this from day one. So I don't want the media to get this twisted. I've been on PIX from the first day that it happened. On the morning show, 10 o'clock show at night. We've been on. I was on the phone with AM News this morning. So the media, get this right. We're not opportunists. We're not looking for anything. Nobody's running for office here. But we didn't have time to coordinate. When we do something, we want to make sure everybody's available to do it. And today was the day that we was all able to come together and do this. So let's just be clear on that. I don't want to see a newscast saying that 9 days later they came out. No, we've been out on this issue. We just haven't been able to come together to do this and have the family here, Mr. Graham, and everybody together. So let's be clear on that.
His job is to represent the police officers of this city. What would you have him say?
How about this? How about this?
to.
I'll give him a statement. Hey, Patty, and Patty's a friend of mine. I know him a long time. How about Patty saying this? After the incident happened, you know, as the PBA president, we stand behind the officers on the scene. We're waiting for a clear, thorough investigation, and we'll have statements after that. We don't want to comment on the truth. And you go, is it a chokehold? I refrain from speaking on that issue at this time. We're going to wait until there's an investigation.
So you know Pat Lynch. Does
Of
that
course.
sound like the Pat Lynch you know?
That sounds like every PBA president in the history of the NYPD. There's no checks and balances. They just want to, you know, a good leader, I've been a leader for a long time. A good leader will tell a guy, hey, you messed up. And this is how we fix it. But don't go on national TV and tell me that the guy didn't do something that was wrong. I don't know if the cop should get 25 years in jail, but I do know that he choked the man. And you can't, my eyes, I got 20/20. My eyes are not deceiving me.
Not only telling
That's
the
not Pat Lynch's job. Pat Lynch's job is
Don't forget, he's a police officer as well. He has a fiduciary responsibility for the people of the city of New York. The city of New York pays his salary.
That's right.
So he has a responsibility. We understand he's a union representative, but his comments should not have been excessively disrespectful to the residents of New York City as well as the family of the deceased. So we understand his responsibilities, but he also has a responsibility to the citizens of the city of New York. He's a police officer. He's getting his salary. He will soon one day get a pension. His medical benefits, his dental benefits are being paid by taxpayers. He has a responsibility to them as well.
and he has the responsibility to human beings.
Right.
Because when you take that shoe and put it on the other foot, that's Bobby Lynch, his son. I guarantee you that would have been the chokehold.
That's right.
It's not.
Any more questions?
I have a react to Pat saying it's Reverend Al Sharpton who made this a racial issue. It wasn't a racial issue until Sharpton rallied.
Well, this first of all, this is about justice. This is about accountability. Now, he could argue with Sharpton. Sharpton's not law enforcement. Let him argue with us. But we also know, as black law enforcement officers, that these incidents of police criminality happen more in the communities of color than it happens in any other communities that's throughout the nation. And the statistics show it. So we're not race baiting. We're saying statistical facts of what's going on. But as black law enforcement, we feel just like the families feel, because we're connected to the community. We work hard in our community, and we wear the blue uniform and the badge with pride. But when they don't see us standing for justice, it makes our job even harder, and it makes every good cop, no matter what color he is, job even harder when there's no accountability for those officers that cross the line.
That's right. What needs to change so that there's more accountability for NYPD officers in those kind of incidents?
They have to start suspending them. Let's be honest. If you start suspending and firing and putting those officers on the perp walk that violate people's rights, violate their civil and human rights, things will change. When you start taking money out their pocket, things will change. That's called behavior modification. Because other officers will see that and they don't want to do it. Bratton, de Blasio is not sending the message. Bratton was elected with over 70% of people of color. De Blasio was elected with 70% of people of color. Nobody of people of color in law enforcement management.
That's right.
And now, Lynch is going to get upset that the people that put him in office want him to be accountability over the police department. He ran on that. That's what he ran on. This is his test. He might be a one-term mayor because this is his test right now. What is he going to do with the police department? Everybody was upset that he brought Bratton back. Come on. So here we are today. But we're just saying, the black community should be treated like every other community.
Were you upset that Blasio brought Bratton back?
Yes, personally, yes, I was. Yes, I was. And you just see nothing's changed. Another chokehold, because the bias was what? Under Bratton's watch. Under Bratton's watch. So nothing's changed. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he's not sending the right message. He's not sending the right message that he's a different Bratton. He's not sending the right message. To put an officer on desk duty? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? If I did the same thing, I work in Westchester County Department of Corrections. If I did the same thing, I'm looking at 90-day suspension off the bat. And guess what? If they win an arbitration, they get it, but it sends a message. He's not sending the right message to the police department or the right message to the communities that he is head over the police department, that he claims that he's going to change, and it won't be the old one.
That's right. And what about the broken windows theory? So the broken windows theory, the quality of life issues, we've been doing it for a long time. It's been like 20 years we've been doing the broken windows. Quality of life issues, urinating in public, drinking outside, congregating on the sidewalk, loosey cigarettes. So we have made, all of us, all the cops, I can take credit with that. We have made this city the safest, biggest city in America. But now, those same tactics that we have used, we're using them and we're alienating the communities. So at what point do we say, hey, is the Daily News here? Because they did an article where all the quality of life issues being enforced at, the minority communities. So now that the people in those communities are happy it's safe, but now they're saying, hey, police department, take your foot off my neck. Please let me breathe. Yes, I am drinking a beer because I just came off Wall Street and I got fired. Officer, I'm drinking a beer. Can you give me a break? Please? I don't know how I'm gonna pay my mortgage next week. There's no discretion here. We're just locking people up, locking them up, and giving them violations where it's time for them to get a job, they got to put down that they got arrested. Any more questions?
Can you comment on what's happening in Ferguson right now?
No.
In St. Louis?
No.
Yeah,
No.
What, you know what? We want to deal with Pat Lynch right now. We're doing Ferguson tomorrow. We want to deal with Pat Lynch and the irresponsible statements that the PBA president has made. And again, he's my friend. And that I'm his friend, but I'm really upset with those irresponsible statements that was made. Thank you all for coming out.
Any more questions?
Anybody write down anything specific that he said besides when he said it was not a drill hole? Anything specific?
Oh, yeah, Dennis,
Yeah, we have a lot of statements from Pat. He said sometimes people...
Yeah, go to the mic. Go to the mic.
This dude running off, dude. Hey, they want Pat.
Yeah.
Read
the stuff that he said.
Incorrect
the ones that he was saying.
It was the FBA President Mullins who said sometimes you can die, right?
Right.
Yeah. SBA Mullins said. Pat Lynch said that Eric Garner's death was absolutely, the medical examiner's version and conclusion of Eric Garner's death was absolutely wrong. It was mistaken when he concluded that after an autopsy, that Garner's death was a homicide. So again, Pat Lynch went to medical school.
Exactly.
He also went on Pix 11 and stated that as in all cases where, when he was asked about the medical aid to Mr. Garner, he said we turned him to the side like we were trained to do. And again, we've never had any training in the NYPD that says turn someone to the side when their airway is obstructed or when they have difficulty breathing. And then we have the SBA's statements.
Let me just
say, Mr. Tony Lieutenant.
One thing I like to say, and which we have dealt with before, NYPD is not trained in CPR and first aid. So how are they first responders? What if they want to talk about training? Maybe they need to be trained in CPR and first aid, and then they would give immediate aid to Mr. Garner right on the spot. But they're not trained. They're only trained in the academy. They don't go to yearly training to be recertified in CPR and first aid. So they're not first responders, because first responders are trained in CPR and first aid.
As far as you know, that is not the training in terms of the other side.
If someone is vomiting or things like that, then you do that.
Right, or they're having a seizure.
Or having a seizure.
But if they can't breathe,
But
you
if
don't
they can't breathe, you turn them on your back and you open their airway.
Right.
But of course, he was handcuffed, so that couldn't happen.
Yeah, and remember, they're not trained.
Didn't even bother to take the handcuffs off.
That's right. So thank you everybody. Thank you for coming out. You want to ride back with us? You going back to the Bronx?
No,